The desert heat shimmered across Highway 8 like liquid glass, bending light into cruel mirages that made distance impossible to judge. Colonel Nathaniel Flint Thorne lay motionless behind his Winchester Model 70, the rifle's wooden stock slick with sweat against his cheek. Below him, 30 Marines huddled behind disabled Humvees, pinned down by a Republican Guard machine gun nest that had already claimed 4 American lives in the last 6 minutes. It was February 26, 1991, Operation Desert Storm. The ground war was supposed to be over in hours, but nobody had told the Iraqi gunner positioned 2,340 meters across the sand, his PKM machine gun raking the highway with methodical precision that spoke of professional training and zero mercy. Nathaniel was 48 years old, a Marine Scout sniper who had spent 26 years mastering the mathematics of death at extreme distance. His spotter, a 24-year-old corporal named Roland Brennan, crouched beside him with a rangefinder, his voice tight with urgency. "Sir, that's over a mile. Heat mirage is brutal. Winds shifting every 30 seconds. Nathaniel's eye never left his scope. The machine gun nest was a dark smudge through the shimmer, barely visible as more than a heat signature in muzzle flash. At this distance in 115-degree heat, the air itself became an enemy. Rising thermals bent light in unpredictable waves. Wind gusted and died without pattern. Even the Earth's rotation became a factor when bullets spent nearly 3 seconds in flight. "Math doesn't care about difficult, Corporal," Nathaniel said quietly. "It just is." He watched the mirage bands rolling across the desert like ocean waves. 8 feet of vertical rise, maybe 10. That meant 3 additional mils of elevation to compensate for the light bending downward. The wind. He wet his lips, felt the moisture evaporate instantly. 12 miles per hour from his left, but decreasing across the valley floor, probably dropping to 8 at the target. The machine gun fired again. A Marine screamed. Nathaniel's breathing slowed. 4 seconds inhale, 6 seconds exhale. His heart rate dropped from 72 beats per minute to 60, then 58. The rifle's crosshairs settled on a point 18 inches above and 14 inches left of where his eyes told him the target should be. Not where he saw the nest, where mathematics promised it actually was. The trigger broke at precisely 3.5 pounds of pressure. The Winchester's .30-06 Springfield round erupted from the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, spinning 4 times every 12 inches as it clawed through superheated air. For 8 seconds, the bullet fought physics itself, gravity pulling it earthward, wind pushing it sideways, air resistance slowing its velocity below the speed of sound halfway through its journey. Nathaniel stayed locked on his scope, counting in his head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. The machine gunner's head snapped back. The PKM fell silent. 2 more figures rushed to man the weapon. Nathaniel cycled the bolt, chambered another round. The second shot took 2. 9 seconds to cross the impossible distance. The assistant gunner collapsed. 1 more rush toward the gun. 1 more shot. 1 more body falling away from American lives saved. Brennan's voice cracked through the radio. "Targets destroyed. All Marines advancing. Jesus Christ, sir, that was..." But Nathaniel was already breaking down his position, his face expressionless. 23 days later, General Norman Schwarzkopf would pin a bronze star on his chest at a ceremony Nathaniel barely remembered. What he did remember was the mathematics, always the mathematics, and the weight of knowing that 1 miscalculation, 1 number wrong in the equation, would have meant 30 families receiving folded flags instead of husbands and sons walking off planes. The medal went into a box. The rifle went back to Montana. And Nathaniel went home to teach his 8-year-old granddaughter that shooting was just geometry with consequences. 8 years later, on a Montana ranch outside Great Falls, a little girl named Kiara Thorne missed her first shot by 3 feet. She was 8 years old, all elbows and determination, lying prone on a weathered shooting mat with her grandfather's Winchester Model 70 dwarfing her small frame. The target, a rusted tractor tire 600 meters downrange, remained unmolested by her 30-06 round, which had sailed high and right, kicking up dust in the sagebrush beyond. Kira's face flushed red. Her hands trembled as she cycled the bolt, the metallic click loud in the mountain silence. "I can't do this," she whispered. Nathaniel Thorne, now 56, and carrying the quiet weight of a man who had seen too many things, knelt beside her. His calloused hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Tell me what you did wrong." "I don't know, I aimed right at it." "And that's your first mistake." Nathaniel's voice was patient, the tone of a teacher who understood that lessons learned through frustration lasted longer than those given freely. "Bullets don't fly straight, Kira. They drop. They drift. They're slaves to physics from the moment they leave the barrel." He pointed downrange at the target shimmering in the afternoon heat. 600 meters. That bullet falls. How much do you think? Kira bit her lip, thinking. Math was her favorite subject at school. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. The bullet is in the air for, I don't know, maybe a second? 0.86 seconds. Good estimate. Nathaniel smiled. Now factor in that the bullet slows down because of air resistance. By the time it reaches that tire, it's dropping about 11 feet from where it left the barrel. 11 feet, Kira. You aimed straight at the target. Your bullet landed in the dirt beyond it. He reached over and adjusted the scope on the rifle, clicking the elevation dial. This is called Kentucky windage, old school calculation. You aim high to let the bullet arc down to the target. You aim to the side to compensate for wind pushing it left or right. You're not shooting at what you see. You're shooting at where mathematics promises your target will meet your bullet. Kira's eyes widened. So it's like throwing a basketball. You don't throw it at the hoop, you throw it above the hoop. Exactly like that, except the hoop is half a mile away, the ball weighs less than an ounce, an invisible wind is pushing it sideways while gravity pulls it down. Nathaniel's weathered face crinkled with approval. The bullet doesn't care who fired it, male, female, young, old. Mathematics is the only truth that matters. Everything else is just noise. She settled back behind the rifle, her small face set with renewed concentration. This time, when she looked through the scope, she aimed 18 inches high. She felt the wind on her left cheek, adjusted 6 inches to the left to compensate. Her breathing slowed. The crosshairs steadied. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. 0.86 seconds later, the tractor tire jumped as the 150-grain bullet punched through rusted steel. Kira's whoop of joy echoed across the ranch. Nathaniel grinned, his hand squeezing her shoulder with pride that went beyond words. "That's lesson 1, he said. "Want to know what lesson 2 is? Yes. Lesson 2 is that you just got lucky with the wind. Tomorrow we learn to actually read it." For the next 10 years, every Saturday morning became a classroom written in ballistics and discipline. Nathaniel taught Kira to read wind through mirage shimmer, to judge distance by eye using the mil-dot formula, to calculate bullet drop in her head faster than most people could use a calculator. He taught her that precision shooting wasn't about strength or aggression. It was about patience, mathematics, and the iron will to control your body's involuntary movements. Breathing, heartbeat, muscle tremor, until you became less human and more instrument. By the time Kira was 14, she could consistently hit targets at 1,200 meters. By 16, she was shooting competitions against men twice her age and beating them with quiet consistency that made her grandfather beam with fierce pride. By 18, she was applying to Montana State University for a mathematics degree, and Nathaniel knew with absolute certainty that he had taught her everything he could about shooting. The rest, the courage to take the shot when everyone said you couldn't, that she would have to find herself. The phone call came during Kira's senior year, 3 weeks before her 23rd birthday. Her grandfather was dying. Mesothelioma, the doctor said, The cancer came from asbestos exposure, likely during his service years, possibly exacerbated by the burning oil fields of Kuwait during Desert Storm. The kind of disease that appeared decades after exposure, patient and merciless. Stage 4, weeks left, not months. Kira drove 11 hours from Bozeman to Billings, pushing her truck 10 miles over the speed limit the entire way, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. She arrived at St. Vincent Hospital as the Montana winter sun was setting, painting the snow-covered peaks blood red. Nathaniel Thorne looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. The man who had seemed like a force of nature throughout her childhood had been reduced to paper-thin skin stretched over prominent bones, oxygen tubes running to his nose, monitors beeping their steady countdown to silence. But his eyes, 70 years old and cancer-riddled, those eyes were still sharp as rifle sights. "There's my mathematician," he said, his voice a rasp, but still carrying warmth. "You skip any finals to get here?" "They don't matter." Kira pulled a chair close, taking his hand. It felt like holding a bird, all delicate bones and fragile skin. "Nothing matters except being here." They talked for hours, about her classes, about the ranch, about everything except what they both knew was coming. Finally, as the hospital settled into its late-night quiet, Nathaniel's expression grew serious. "Kira, I need to tell you something. About that Bronze Star." "Grandpa, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." His grip on her hand strengthened slightly. "That shot in Iraq, everyone remembers the distance, the conditions, the Marines I saved. But what nobody talks about is that I was terrified. Not of dying, of missing. Of those 30 boys dying because I couldn't make the math work." He paused, breathing carefully through the oxygen tubes. "I lay there for 40 seconds, calculating, and in those 40 seconds, I heard every voice that had ever told me a shot like that was impossible. Every instructor who said extreme distance was luck, more than skill. Every doubt I'd ever had about whether I was good enough. But you made the shot." "I made the shot because I decided that being terrified of missing was less important than taking the chance to save them. That's the difference between a good sniper and a great one. Not the calculations, not the equipment, the willingness to take the shot everyone else calls impossible." Nathaniel reached with his free hand to the small table beside the bed, where a velvet box sat among the get well cards. He opened it, revealing the Bronze Star with its red, white, and blue ribbon. "I'm giving this to you, not because you've earned it, that's mine, but because you need to understand what it represents. Every time someone tells you that you can't do something because you're a woman, because you're too young, because the odds are impossible, you look at this medal and remember that impossible just means nobody's done it yet." Tears streamed down Kira's face. "I don't know if I can be what you were." "You don't need to be what I was." Nathaniel's eyes held hers with fierce intensity. "You need to be better. I taught you the mathematics. Your generation has better equipment, better training, better understanding of ballistics than we ever dreamed of. But the hardest part, the courage to take the shot, that's something nobody can teach. You either find it or you don't." His breathing grew labored. A nurse appeared, checked monitors, adjusted medication. When she left, Nathaniel was fading, his eyes heavy. "Grandpa? I'm proud of you, Kira. Always have been, always will be." His voice was barely a whisper now. "Promise me something. Don't let them tell you what you can't do. I taught you to shoot like a Marine. Now go be one." 3 days later, on February 14th, 2013, Colonel Nathaniel Flint Thorne died with his granddaughter holding his hand and his Bronze Star resting on the blanket over his heart. The funeral was full military honors, 21-gun salute, taps played over a snow-covered cemetery, the flag folded with precision and handed to Kira, who stood ramrod straight in a black dress, refusing to let her tears fall until the last mourner had left. That night, alone in her grandfather's ranch house, Surrounded by decades of memories and the lingering smell of gun oil and old leather, Kira made a decision. She opened her laptop, navigated to the Navy recruiting website, stared at the page for 10 minutes, the bronze star sitting beside the keyboard catching lamplight. Then she filled out the application. She enlisted 2 months later, 1 week after graduating with honors in mathematics. The recruiter, a chief petty officer who had seen every type of candidate, looked at her test scores and whistled low. "Ma'am, with these scores, you could go officer track. Why enlist?" Kira met his eyes steadily. "Because officers give orders. I want to be the one taking the shot." Naval Special Warfare Training Center, Coronado, California, April 2017. The sun hadn't risen yet, but 42 candidates stood in perfect formation on the beach, their breath misting in the pre-dawn chill. Kira Thorne, now 26 and carrying muscle earned through 3 years of brutal preparation, stood in the second row. The only woman in the Naval Special Warfare Sniper Course Class 347. She'd expected that. What she hadn't expected was the man standing before them. Chief Warrant Officer Garrett Blackwell was 42 years old, with shoulders like a linebacker and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite in disappointment. 20 years in Naval Special Warfare, 3 combat deployments, a reputation for excellence that bordered on legendary, and an equal reputation for washing out candidates he deemed unworthy. He paced before the formation slowly, his eyes cataloging each candidate with the cold assessment of a predator evaluating prey. Bud/S Sniper Course has an 83% attrition rate, Blackwell said, his voice carrying across the beach without needing to shout. That means 42 of you standing here, 7, maybe 8 if I'm feeling generous, will graduate. The rest will quit. Or I will decide they don't have what it takes and they will be removed. His eyes found Kira, lingered. This course is not about political correctness. It is not about making everyone feel included. It is about producing the most lethal precision shooters in the world's most elite fighting force. Snipers in combat carry 70-pound packs across mountains. They hold firing positions for 12 hours without moving. They make shots at distances where physics becomes more enemy than ally. Blackwell stopped directly in front of Kira. "Candidate Thorne, step forward." She did, her jaw set, refusing to show anything but confidence. "You scored highest on the entrance exam. Impressive. Tell me, candidate, why does a woman want to be a sniper?" The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Every candidate was watching, every instructor. This was the moment that would define her entire course. Kira looked Blackwell directly in the eyes. "Sir, bullets don't care about gender. They care about mathematics and trigger discipline. I'm here because I can calculate wind drift faster than most candidates can use a ballistics app. And I can hold a firing position until my heart rate drops below 55 beats per minute. Gender is irrelevant. Skill is everything." Blackwell's expression didn't change. "Confidence is good. Arrogance will get you killed. We'll see if you back up those words." He stepped back. "All candidates, 20-mile ruck march. Full gear. You have 4 hours. Move." The beach erupted into controlled chaos as candidates rushed to their packs. Kira hefted hers, 72 pounds including rifle, and started moving. Beside her, a candidate named Morrison muttered under his breath, 4 hours to prove she doesn't belong." She didn't waste breath responding. She just marched. Week 4. The attrition rate was tracking perfectly to prediction. 30 candidates remained. The morning stress test started with an 18-mile ruck march, this time in full combat load. Then, with zero rest, candidates moved directly to the shooting range. Hands trembling from exhaustion, hearts hammering at 180 beats per minute, every muscle screaming for rest. Blackwell stood at the firing line, his expression giving away nothing. Standard qualification shoot, 1,000 meters, 10 shots, 2-minute time limit. He paused, his eyes finding Kira again. Male candidates shoot at 800 meters today. They're fatigued. It's reasonable accommodation. The implication hung in the air like poison. The other candidates looked at her, waiting. Candidate Thorne, your target is 1,000 meters. Unless you'd like the accommodation? Every fiber of her body was shaking. Her legs felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. Her hands tremored with an 8 hertz frequency that made precise shooting nearly impossible. The smart play, the tactical play, was to take the 800-meter target and preserve her scores. She thought of her grandfather, dying in a hospital bed, making an impossible shot because 30 lives depended on not taking the easy option. 1,000 meters, sir. No accommodation needed. Blackwell nodded slightly. Your funeral. Candidates, you have 2 minutes starting now. Kira dropped into prone position, her Macmillan TAC-50 settling against her shoulder like an old friend. The rifle weighed 30 pounds. Her arms shook under the strain. Through her scope, the target at 1,000 meters wavered and danced, her exhausted body making the crosshairs jump erratically. Breathing. That was the key. She fell into the familiar rhythm, slow inhale, slower exhale, finding that moment between breaths where the body stilled completely. Her pulse steadied at 54 beats per minute. The crosshairs finally settled. Wind was 12 miles per hour, left to right. At 1,000 meters with a .50 BMG round, that meant, her exhausted brain did the math automatically, 5.8 mils of hold. Elevation, 13.2 MOA. First shot. The rifle thundered. Through the scope, she saw dust kick up 3 inches left of center mass. Adjust. Fire. Center mass. 1 down. 9 more shots. Her world narrowed to nothing but calculations in trigger control. Breath. Math. Fire. The rhythm of precision overriding the screaming of her exhausted muscles. When the 2 minutes ended, she'd fired all 10 shots. Her arms gave out, and she collapsed onto her side, gasping. Blackwell walked to her position, examining her target through binoculars. The silence stretched. 10 shots fired, 10 hits, center mass grouping, 7 inches. He lowered the binoculars, his expression unreadable. Candidate Thorne, that's the highest qualifying score in the history of this range for post-ruck engagement. He leaned down slightly. Lucky wind conditions. Then he walked away, calling for the next shooter. Kira lay on the ground, her body refusing to move, but a small smile touching her lips. Lucky wind, sure, whatever he needed to tell himself. Behind her, another candidate, Derek Walsh, muttered to his buddy, "No way that was skill, had to be luck." She filed the name away. People who underestimated her tended to be useful later. Week 14, final qualification week, 15 candidates remaining. The test was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Unknown distance target, single shot, no rangefinder allowed. Calculate the distance using mil-dot formula, adjust for wind and elevation, make the shot. Miss, and you failed the course entirely. Kira checked her rifle the night before, as she did every night. The TAC-50 was pristine, every component she'd personally inspected and maintained. She went to sleep confident. She woke at 400 and immediately knew something was wrong. Her hands moved over the rifle with practiced efficiency, checking bolt carrier, barrel, scope. Everything seemed normal until she looked through the optic at a distant landmark she'd memorized for reference. The parallax was off, significantly. Parallax error occurred when the scope's internal focus didn't match the target distance, causing the reticle to appear to move against the target when the shooter's eyes shifted position. At long range, it could throw shots by feet. Someone had adjusted her scope's parallax setting from infinity to approximately 200 meters. In 15 weeks of training, not a single rifle had been tampered with. The punishment for sabotage was immediate dismissal and possible criminal charges. But here, the night before final qualification, Someone had risked everything to ensure she failed. She had two options: report it and trigger an investigation that might delay testing, making her look weak and paranoid, or fix it herself. Kira checked her watch. 0437. Qualification started at 0600. She had less than 90 minutes. She pulled out her grandfather's old notebook, the one he'd carried in Desert Storm. Pages of handwritten calculations, old-school methods from before digital ballistic computers existed. Kentucky windage, mil-dot ranging, parallax adjustment using known distance reference points. Her hands moved with practiced precision, making micro-adjustments to the scope, while cross-referencing against three different landmarks at known distances. At 0558, she finished. The scope was zeroed. She'd recalibrated in 81 minutes, using methods most modern shooters had never learned. The test began at exactly 600. Candidates stood in a line, each with a different target at an unknown distance. Blackwell observed from behind, a clipboard in hand, his face the usual mask of professional assessment. Kira's target was a steel silhouette on a distant ridge. No markers, no reference points, just mathematics and faith. She looked through her scope, found a reference object near the target, a fence post she estimated at 6 feet tall. Using the mil-dot reticle, she measured the post's apparent height, 0.38 mils. The math flowed through her mind automatically. Range equals object height divided by mil reading times 1,000 divided by 3.28. 6 feet divided by 0.38 mils times 1,000 divided by 3.28 equals 1,579 meters. Call it 1,580. Wind, 11 miles per hour, quartering from the left. Bullet, 750 grain Hornady AMAX. At 1,580 meters, wind drift would be 7.2 mils. Elevation, 16.2 MOA for bullet drop. She made her adjustments, settled into position. Her breathing slowed naturally into the practiced rhythm. Heartbeat dropped to 58 beats per minute. The shot broke clean. 3.1 seconds later, the steel target rang with a sound like a church bell. Dead center. Blackwell walked to her position, his clipboard showing her scores. When he spoke, his voice carried across the range so all candidates could hear. Candidate Thorne, distance to target, 1,580 meters. Your calculation? 1,580 meters, sir. Wind call? 11 miles per hour, quartering left, sir. Impact location? Center mass, sir. Blackwell studied her for a long moment. Then he marked his clipboard. Score, 98 out of 100. Highest qualifying score in class 347. Highest score in the past 4 years of this course. He paused. Congratulations, Chief Petty Officer Thorne. You've earned it. The deliberate use of her rate, she'd been promoted 3 months earlier, was his way of acknowledging she was no longer a candidate. She was a graduate. That night, after the graduation ceremony where she stood as the first woman to complete the course in that cycle, Kira found Blackwell in his office. Sir, I need to report something. He looked up from paperwork. Go ahead, Chief. My rifle was tampered with. Night before final qual. Parallax was deliberately miscalibrated. Blackwell's expression didn't change. Did you file a report? No, sir. I fixed it myself. Do you know who did it? I have suspicions. No proof. Blackwell leaned back in his chair. Chief Thorne, in your career, you will face enemies who respect rules of engagement and enemies who don't. You'll face equipment failure, weather that tries to kill you, and teammates who doubt your abilities. The question isn't whether obstacles appear, it's whether you overcome them without needing someone to hold your hand. He stood, moving to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. For what it's worth, I suspected something might happen. I had range security footage reviewed. We know who did it. He's being processed for administrative separation as we speak. Kira felt vindication wash over her. followed immediately by something else. "Sir, I don't want special treatment or protection. I want to succeed or fail on my own merit." "This isn't special treatment." Blackwell's voice was firm. "This is maintaining standards. Sabotage is sabotage, regardless of target. That candidate would have been dismissed if he'd done it to any graduate." He paused. "But you're right about one thing. You'll face worse in the field. Much worse. Are you ready for that?" "Yes, sir." "We'll see." Blackwell handed her a folder. "Your next assignment, SEAL Team 6, Viper Squadron. You ship to Virginia in 2 weeks. They requested you specifically after reviewing your scores." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Your grandfather would be proud, Chief. That Bronze Star he earned, you're on your way to matching it." Kira left his office with the folder under her arm and her grandfather's medal in her pocket, its weight somehow lighter now. She'd proven she could make the shot. The hardest part was done. She had no idea that the impossible shot was still ahead of her, waiting in the mountains of Afghanistan, where mathematics and courage would collide at a distance that made her qualification look easy. But that revelation would come later. Tonight, she was simply a newly graduated sniper, 26 years old, standing on a California beach watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. Tomorrow, she would become a warrior. Tonight, she allowed herself to simply be her grandfather's granddaughter, carrying his legacy forward, one perfectly calculated shot at a time. Helmand Province, Afghanistan, March 2018. The compound materialized through Kira's spotting scope like a ghost solidifying from desert heat. Mud brick walls the color of dried blood, flat roofs bristling with communications equipment, and 3 vehicles parked in a courtyard that intelligence said belonged to a bomb maker responsible for 17 American casualties in the past 9 months. Kira had been in Afghanistan for 6 weeks. This was her 4th mission with SEAL Team 6, Viper Squadron. And for 4 missions, she'd been relegated to what the team politely called Reserve Overwatch, a tactical position that basically meant sitting on a distant ridge while the real operators conducted the actual raid. The reason was simple. Lieutenant Commander Garrett Blackwell, her former instructor and now her commanding officer, didn't trust that her training would translate to combat. Not yet. Not until she proved herself under conditions where mistakes meant body bags instead of failed scores. She understood his logic. She hated it, but she understood it. Beside her, Master Chief Roland Ironhide Brennan adjusted his spotting scope, his weathered hands moving with the economy of motion that came from 3 decades in special operations. At 54, Brennan was ancient by SEAL standards, held together by scar tissue and what he claimed was pure spite. He'd volunteered to be her spotter after reviewing her qualification scores, saying only that he wanted to see if she was as good as the numbers suggested. What he hadn't mentioned until their 3rd mission together was that he'd served in Desert Storm, 1st Marine Division, Highway 8, the same battle where her grandfather had made his legendary shot. Primary sniper element is in position. Brennan's voice was barely above a whisper, though they were 1,200 meters from the compound, with nobody within a kilometer of their hide site. Old habits. Viper Actual is calling mission start in 5 mics. Kira keyed her radio once to acknowledge, then settled deeper into her prone position. The Macmillan TAC-50 was an extension of her body now, 30 pounds of precision engineering that she'd learned to love and hate in equal measure. Love for its devastating accuracy at extreme range. Hate for the way it dug into her shoulder during 12-hour overwatch positions. The night was cool, temperature dropping toward 45 degrees after a day that had peaked at 94. Perfect shooting weather, minimal mirage, stable air density, predictable wind patterns. Through her night vision scope, the compound glowed green and grainy, thermal signatures blooming white where guards clustered around fires. Viper elements moving, Blackwell's voice crackled through her earpiece. All Overwatch positions, stand by. Kira watched through her scope as 8 shadows detached from the surrounding darkness and flowed toward the compound like smoke. SEAL team operations were poetry written in violence, precise, coordinated, beautiful in their terrible efficiency. The breach happened in seconds. Flashbangs strobed white through her night vision. Then sustained gunfire, the sharp crack of M4 carbines overlapping with the deeper boom of shotguns blowing doors off hinges. Her finger rested outside the trigger guard, waiting, watching, ready for a target that would never come because she was 1,200 meters away and the fight was happening in rooms too small for precision rifle work. HVT secured, Blackwell's voice carried satisfaction. All elements prepare for extract. Another mission. Another successful operation. Another night where Kiera provided overwatch that wasn't needed. She was beginning to think she'd made a mistake. That maybe this wasn't where she belonged. That maybe the explosion turned night into day. The lead Humvee in the extraction convoy simply ceased to exist, replaced by a fireball that climbed 50 feet into the Afghan sky. The IED had been buried perfectly, triggered remotely, and now the SEAL element that had been moving toward the vehicles was exposed, caught in the open while secondary ambush positions opened fire from 3 directions. Contact, contact, IED strike, primary extract vehicle destroyed. Blackwell's voice had lost all its calm. All elements, find cover. Overwatch, we need fire support now. Kira's world sharpened to crystal clarity. Her eye found the scope. Her breathing steadied automatically. Brennan was already calling targets. PKM machine gun, northeast corner compound, 940 meters, elevated position. She found it. A 2-man crew behind a Soviet-era machine gun, the weapon's muzzle flash strobing in her night vision like a strobe light of death. They were chewing up the courtyard where 8 SEALs huddled behind a low wall that wouldn't stop rifle rounds, let alone machine gun fire. The math flooded through her mind unbidden. Range 940 meters. Elevation difference 23 meters, uphill angle. Wind 11 miles per hour, left to right. Temperature 46 degrees. Barometric pressure 29.8 inches. Her fingers adjusted the scope's turrets. 6.2 mils elevation. 2.1 mils wind hold left. Chief, Brennan's voice was tight. That's a moving target behind partial cover. Difficult shot. I have it, she said, her voice steady despite her heart hammering at 140 beats per minute. Her radio crackled. Thorne, can you make that shot? Blackwell's voice. She didn't answer with words. She answered with her trigger finger. The TAC-50 bucked against her shoulder. 1.8 seconds later, through her scope, she watched the machine gunner's head snap back in a spray that looked black through night vision. The gun fell silent, but his assistant was already reaching for the weapon. Kira cycled the bolt. The empty brass casing ejected, spinning through the air to land with a soft clink on the rocks beside her. Fresh round chambered. Target acquired. Math recalculated. He'd moved 2 meters forward, now 938 meters. Fire, 1.9 seconds. The assistant gunner collapsed across the weapon. A third fighter rushed from shadows toward the silent gun. Cycle, chamber, acquire, calculate, fire. 2.0 seconds. Target down. 3 confirmed kills, machine gun silenced. Brennan's voice carried something that might have been awe. Jesus Christ, Chief. 3 shots, 3 kills, 42 seconds total time. The radio erupted with controlled chaos as the SEAL element used the suppression to bound back towards secondary extract vehicles. Kira kept her scope moving, searching for new threats. But the surviving enemy fighters had melted back into the compound's maze of rooms, unwilling to face the invisible sniper who just dismantled their ambush in less than a minute. 15 minutes later, all friendly forces were extracted. 0 additional casualties. The bomb maker was in custody, and Kira had earned her first 3 combat kills. Back at Forward Operating Base Shank, as dawn painted the Hindu Kush Mountains in shades of amber and gold, Blackwell found her in the armory, cleaning her rifle. "Good shooting tonight, Chief." She looked up from wiping carbon fouling from the bolt carrier. "Thank you, sir." "Your grandfather, he was Colonel Nathaniel Thorne, right? 1st Marine Division, Desert Storm?" "Yes, sir." Blackwell pulled up a chair, his usual command presence softening slightly. "I looked up his record after you graduated sniper course. That shot on Highway 8, 2,340 meters, saved 30 Marines. That was Brennan's unit." Kira's hands stilled on the rifle. "Master Chief told me, after our second mission together. He was there when your grandfather made that shot. 24 years old, scared shitless behind a disabled Humvee while a Republican Guard machine gun was walking fire toward his position." Blackwell's eyes were distant, seeing something else. "Brennan said he watched your grandfather take 40 seconds to calculate. 40 seconds while men were dying, and then one shot. One impossible shot, and they lived." He stood, moving toward the door, then paused. "You just did something similar. 3 shots instead of 1, but the same ice water in your veins. Same refusal to accept impossible." He looked back at her. "You're not Reserve Overwatch anymore, Chief. You're primary sniper, Viper Squadron. Brennan's your permanent spotter. Don't make me regret this." "I won't, sir." After he left, Kira sat alone in the armory, the smell of gun oil and solvent surrounding her like incense, and allowed herself one moment of pride before exhaustion pulled her towards sleep. She dreamed of her grandfather, lying in a hospital bed, his hand in hers, his voice telling her to take the shots nobody else would take. She had no idea how prophetic that dream would become. 3 years passed, 15 deployments, 42 missions, 87 confirmed kills at ranges from 340 meters to 1,640 meters. Kiera became what Blackwell had promised to create, one of the most lethal precision shooters in naval special warfare. But it was the mission she didn't take, the kill she didn't make, that would haunt her until Khorasan Province. June 2021, Kandahar Province, a high-value target compound raid that intelligence said housed a Taliban logistics coordinator. Kira had overwatch from 1,480 meters, Brennan beside her calling wind and distance. The raid went smooth until it didn't. The HVT wasn't alone. He had security, professional fighters who'd clearly expected contact. The firefight spilled into the compound's courtyard, and through her scope, Kira acquired a target. Male, military age, AK-47 in hand, drawing a bead on a SEAL breacher who was focused on a door and wouldn't see the threat until it was too late. Easy shot. 1,480 meters. Stable position. No wind. Just squeeze the trigger and save a teammate's life. She hesitated. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. The target's face was visible in her scope. Bearded, mid-30s, a red scarf around his neck. Something about his movement pattern, the way he'd taken cover, spoke of training that went beyond Taliban irregulars. Professional, dangerous, but also calculating, not panicked. In those 2 seconds of hesitation, the target shifted position, moving behind a wall. The SEAL breacher, a chief petty officer named Marcus Webb, had to assault the position directly. He took 2 rounds to his plate carrier, survived, but cracked ribs and a punctured lung meant medevac and 6 months recovery. The after-action review cleared Kira. She'd had no clear shot once the target moved. Nobody blamed her. Nobody except herself. Blackwell called her into his office the next day. "Chief, what happened?" "I hesitated, sir." "Why?" She'd thought about this all night. Something about the target seemed wrong. Like engaging might compromise something larger. Like he was important beyond just that moment. Blackwell studied her for a long time. "Your instinct was partially correct. Post-raid intelligence identified 2 bodies from that compound. One was the logistics coordinator we wanted. The other was a Chechen mercenary we didn't know was there. The target you hesitated on, the one with the red scarf, he escaped. We believe he was Dmitry Volkov. The name meant nothing to her then. Also known as the Vulture, former Russian Spetsnaz, defected to Chechen rebels in the Second Chechen War, now freelances for Taliban and other groups. He's credited with 63 confirmed American KIA over the past 6 years, most of them officers, pilots, and snipers. Blackwell's voice was flat. You had the Vulture in your crosshairs, Chief, and you hesitated. The words hit like a physical blow. Sir, I'm not reprimanding you. Hesitation happens. What matters is whether you learn from it. He slid a folder across his desk. This is Volkov's file. Every American he's killed, every mission he's interfered with. I want you to study it, memorize it, because if you ever see him again, there can't be hesitation. Understood? Yes, sir. That night, Kira read the file cover to cover. 63 names, 63 families destroyed, 63 futures erased by a single man whose skill with a rifle matched or exceeded her own. She'd had him, and she'd let him go. It would take 18 months before she had a chance at redemption. Bagram Airfield, January 2022. The briefing room was packed, 24 SEAL operators, 6 support personnel, and enough brass to make Kira uncomfortable. Lieutenant Commander Blackwell stood at the front beside a large tactical display showing the mountains of Khorasan province. Intelligence has located Dmitry Volkov, Blackwell began without preamble. The Vulture. He's operating in Khorasan province, believed to be coordinating with Taliban forces preparing for spring offensive operations. The room's energy shifted. Everyone knew the Vulture's reputation. 3 days ago, Taliban forces ambushed a Marine convoy near Kalat-e-Nazar. The attack was coordinated, professional, and included precision sniper fire that killed Marine Captain Bradley Morrison with a single shot at 1,840 meters. The round was 7.62 by 54R, Volkov's signature caliber. He left a shell casing with a carved vulture. Blackwell pulled up an intercept transcript. 2 hours ago, we recorded Taliban communications referencing American female operators. The translation is, he paused, his jaw tight. The exact phrase was, bitches at 3,000 meters. They're specifically mocking Chief Thorne's recent operations. Every eye in the room turned to Kira. She kept her face neutral, but inside, something cold and sharp crystallized. Volkov wasn't just taunting Americans. He was taunting her specifically. Our mission, Blackwell continued, is threefold. Primary, capture or eliminate high-value target Fahim Razak, bomb maker responsible for 17 American casualties. Secondary, locate and eliminate Dmitry Volkov. Tertiary, disrupt Taliban preparations in Khorasan province. He outlined the operation. 12-man SEAL element would raid Razak's compound near Kalat-e-Nazar village. Kiera and Brennan would provide overwatch from a ridgeline 2,100 meters away. Other sniper teams would cover alternate approaches. Chief Thorne, Blackwell's voice was formal now, command voice. Your primary sniper for this operation. Master Chief Brennan is your spotter. Your position gives you overwatch on the compound and surrounding terrain. If Volkov appears, he's your target. Questions? No, sir. Good. We insert in 36 hours. Dismissed. As the operators filed out, Brennan caught Kira's arm. Chief, a word. They walked to an empty section of the airfield, the Hindu Kush mountains looming like sleeping giants in the distance. I need to tell you something, Brennan said quietly. About that day in Iraq, Highway 8, your grandfather's shot. Master Chief, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His eyes were distant, seeing across 31 years. I was the radio man, 24 years old, third deployment, and I was more scared than I'd ever been in my life. That machine gun had us completely pinned. We'd lost 4 men already. I could hear the rounds impacting closer, walking toward our position. I knew I absolutely knew I was going to die in that desert. He turned to face her fully. Your grandfather was 150 meters away on a different piece of ridgeline. I watched him through binoculars, watched him take position, make calculations, adjust his scope. It took 40 seconds, felt like 40 hours, and then he fired. Brennan's voice grew thick. I saw the machine gunner drop through my binos, just stopped existing. And your grandfather fired twice more, and suddenly we could move, could fight back, could live. 30 of us walked away from that highway because one man refused to accept that the shot was impossible. He gripped her shoulder. That debt, saving my life, I can never repay it, but I can spot for his granddaughter. I can help you become even better than he was. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, you have his gift. The ice water in your veins, the ability to make the math work when it matters most. Kira felt tears threatening and forced them back. What if I hesitate again, like with Volkov last year? Then you hesitate, Brennan said simply, and then you take the next shot. Your grandfather didn't teach you to be perfect. He taught you to be brave. There's a difference. They stood together in the Afghan twilight, sniper and spotter, bound by legacy and shared purpose. Master Chief? Yeah, Chief. If we find Volkov, I'm not hesitating this time. Good, Brennan said, because he won't either. Khorasan Province, March 15th, 2022, 0340 hours. The mountains were a study in darkness and silence. Kira lay prone on a rocky outcropping 2,100 meters from the target compound, her body molded to the earth, her TAC-50 resting on its bipod like a sleeping predator. Beside her, Brennan scanned with his spotting scope, his breathing barely audible. They'd been in position for 14 hours. 14 hours of watching and waiting while their muscles cramped and their bodies screamed for movement. 14 hours of discipline overriding discomfort. Through her night vision scope, the compound was a collection of green-tinted buildings arranged around a central courtyard. Intel said the bomb maker Razak was inside, sleeping, unaware that 12 SEALs were creeping through the darkness toward his door. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees. Light fog rolled through the valleys below, thick enough to obscure ground-level movement, but thin enough at her elevation to maintain clear sightlines. Perfect conditions for what they called a cold bore shot. The first round fired through a barrel that had cooled to ambient temperature, theoretically the most accurate shot in any sequence. Viper elements in position, Blackwell's voice whispered through her earpiece. Mission start in 90 seconds. Kira's finger moved inside the trigger guard, resting lightly on the two-stage trigger. Not yet, just ready. The breach happened at exactly 0400. Flashbangs, gunfire, the usual symphony of controlled violence. Through her scope, Kira watched thermal signatures bloom white as SEALs flowed through the compound, room by room. Then everything went wrong at once. The compound erupted with return fire. Not panicked resistance, but coordinated, professional suppression. Hidden fighting positions opened up from 3 directions. RPG rounds streaked through the darkness, and Blackwell's voice cut through the radio traffic with an edge of controlled panic. Contact! Heavy contact! Compound was hardened! We're pinned! Through her scope, Kira watched the SEAL element caught in a killing zone, taking cover behind walls that wouldn't stop sustained fire. 8 men trapped, maybe 90 seconds before casualties started mounting. Brennan was already scanning. Stand by. I'm looking for... There. Northwest Ridge. Bearing 315. Range. He paused. Rechecked his rangefinder. Rechecked again. Chief. 5-man team. Setting up indirect fire. 82 millimeter mortar. Ranges 2,470 meters. The number hung in the air between them like an impossible promise. 2,470 meters. 1.4 miles. Farther than she'd ever shot in combat. Farther than her qualification distance. Farther than almost any confirmed kill in naval special warfare history. And they were setting up a mortar that could rain high-explosive rounds directly onto the SEALs in 40 seconds. Viper 1, Phantom, she keyed her radio. I have visual on mortar team, Northwest Ridge, 2,470 meters. Silence. Then Blackwell's voice, tight with stress. Say again distance? 2,470 meters, sir. Negative, Phantom. That's extreme range. Air support is 16 minutes out. Hold position. Through her scope, Kira watched the mortar team work with practiced efficiency. The team leader positioning the base plate, 2 assistants unpacking rounds, 2 security pulling perimeter watch. Professional, experienced, and in 40 seconds they'd start raining death on men she trained with, fought beside, considered brothers. Sir, she said carefully, they'll have rounds on target before air support arrives. We don't have 16 minutes. What's your confidence level, Chief? The question hung like a blade. Kira ran the calculations in her head at computer speed. Range, 2,470 meters equals 2,700 yards, equals 1.4 miles. Elevation difference, plus 47 meters, approximately 25-degree uphill angle. Wind, 12 miles per hour at her position, but wind shifted across valleys. She estimated 8 miles per hour at target elevation. Temperature, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Air density, 1.28 kilograms per cubic meter. Bullet, 750 grain Hornady AMAX. Ballistic coefficient, 1.05. Muzzle velocity, 2,800 feet per second. The math flooded through her consciousness like water through a broken dam. Drop compensation, 18.5 minutes of angle. That was 520 feet of vertical drop. Wind drift, 8.2 mils left. That was 14 feet of horizontal drift. Coriolis effect, 0.3 mils additional for Northern Hemisphere eastward shot. Flight time, 3.2 seconds. Transonic transition at approximately 1,900 meters, where the bullet would slow through the sound barrier. The most unstable moment, where minor manufacturing imperfections in the projectile could cause tumbling and complete miss. Probability of first-round hit. Her gut said 72% based on math alone, but her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Math gets you close, heart gets you there. Sir, mathematical confidence is 72%, but I've trained for this. I can make the shot. Another pause. Through her scope, she watched the mortar team load a ranging round. Phantom, hold fire. That's an order. Wait for air support. The mortar fired. 3.2 seconds later, an explosion bloomed 600 meters short of the compound, throwing dirt and smoke skyward. They were ranging in, walking the rounds closer. The next shot would be 300 meters closer. The one after that would land on target. Brennan whispered beside her, Chief, they're adjusting fast. Professional crew. 2 more rounds and they're on target. Kira watched the team leader bark orders, watched the assistants adjusting the tube's angle. 30 seconds until the next shot. Maybe 90 seconds until they found the range. 2 minutes total before the compound became a kill zone. Air support was 14 minutes out. Her hand moved to her scope's elevation turret, almost without conscious thought. Started dialing. 18.5 MOA. The clicks sounded impossibly loud in the mountain silence. Chief, Brennan's voice was quiet. What are you doing? My job, she said. She keyed her radio one more time. Sir, requesting clearance to engage. Negative, Phantom, that's a direct order. Hold fire. The second mortar round launched. It impacted 350 meters from the compound, close enough that the SEALs could feel the concussion through the ground. Blackwell's voice cracked through the radio. All elements prepare for indirect fire impact. Find hard cover. But there was no hard cover. There was only time running out and mathematics that promised a 72% chance of saving them. Kira thought of her grandfather dying in a hospital bed. His final words about taking the hard shots everyone else called impossible. She thought of Master Chief Brennan, 24 years old and pinned behind a Humvee, watching death walk toward him until one impossible shot gave him 31 more years of life. She thought of Webb, the breacher she'd failed to save because she'd hesitated, and she made her decision. "Master Chief," she said quietly, "final win call. I'm taking the shot." Brennan understood immediately what she was doing, disobeying a direct order, risking her career, possibly her freedom if the shot failed and she was court-martialed for insubordination. He could stop her. One word to Blackwell and she'd be ordered to stand down under threat of immediate relief. Instead, he checked his wind meter, checked his weather station, recalculated based on the mirage patterns he'd been watching for 14 hours. Wind 12 at our position, decreasing to 8 mid-valley, steady at target elevation. Hold 8.2 mils left. Temperature dropped 2 degrees. Adjust elevation 0.3 MOA additional. He paused. "Chief, you missed this shot. We're both going to Leavenworth." "Then I better not miss." She settled deeper into her shooting position. Let the rifle become an extension of her body. Her breathing became mechanical, each cycle measured and precise. The crosshairs steadied as her pulse dropped into the 50s, the zone where instinct gave way to pure calculation. The crosshairs settled on the mortar team leader's chest. Through the scope, she could see him checking calculations, preparing for the third shot that would find the range. 3.2 seconds of flight time. In 3.2 seconds, physics would either prove her right or condemn her. But physics was just mathematics, and mathematics was truth. Everything else was faith. Her finger took up the trigger's slack. First stage. Second stage. The final one. 5 pounds of pressure that separated intention from action. The TAC-50 roared. The muzzle blast kicked dust in fog in a 15-foot radius. The recoil drove into her shoulder with familiar force, and Kira stayed welded to her scope, watching the bullet's invisible arc. She tracked the shot's arc in her mind. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3, then watched the team leader's chest explode through her scope. Brennan's voice was soft with awe. "Hit, confirmed kill. Holy Mother of God, Chief, you just made the shot." But Kira was already cycling the bolt, the empty brass casing ejecting to clink against stone, already chambering the next round, already shifting to the assistant gunner who was frozen in shock, staring at his dead team leader. Range 2,485 meters, wind unchanged. Elevation adjust 0.2 MOA for the 15-meter difference. Fire. 3.3 seconds. The assistant gunner reached for the mortar tube just as 750 grains of copper-jacketed death arrived at 1,400 feet per second. He fell backward, his hands never touching the weapon. Third fighter, grabbing for scattered mortar rounds, trying to salvage the mission. Cycle, chamber, acquire, calculate, fire. 3.2 seconds. Headshot, down. Fourth fighter, running for cover, moving target, lead calculation, 2.5 mils ahead of his running figure. Fire, 3.4 seconds. Backshot, target collapsed mid-stride. Fifth fighter made it to the cave entrance, disappearing into darkness before she could acquire. 4 confirmed kills, 1 escape. Total engagement time, 52 seconds. The mortar tube lay abandoned, its rounds scattered uselessly across the rocks. The radio exploded with Blackwell's voice. "Phantom, did you just engage without clearance?" "Affirmative, sir. Mortar threat neutralized. 4 enemy KIA confirmed." Silence. 8 seconds of dead air that felt like eternity. Then Brennan keyed his radio. "Viper 1, Ironhide. Confirm Chief Thorne engaged and destroyed mortar team at range 2,470 meters. I observed all impacts through spotting scope. Request ISR drone confirm kills for official record." More silence. Finally, Blackwell's voice came back, carrying something between anger and awe. Phantom, that was insubordination. That was also the finest piece of shooting I've ever witnessed. ISR confirms 4 enemy KIA, mortar threat eliminated, Viper element moving to secondary extract point. We're clear because of you. I'll deal with the disobedience later. Right now, outstanding goddamn work, Chief. Kiera collapsed behind her rifle, her body shaking with adrenaline dump. Her hands trembled. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She just disobeyed a direct order in combat. She just made 4 kills at a distance that would have seemed impossible a week ago. She just saved 12 men's lives with mathematics and courage. And somewhere in the mountains, Dmitri, the vulture Volkov, was watching, learning, preparing his response to the woman who just announced herself as his equal. Brennan's hand settled on her shoulder. Chief, your grandfather would be proud. That was his shot. Same impossible distance, same ice water, same refusal to accept failure. Master Chief, I just committed insubordination. Yeah, you also just entered the history books. He handed her the spent brass casing from her first shot. Keep this. In 50 years, snipers will study what you just did. Kiera took the casing, still warm from firing, and slipped it into her pocket beside her grandfather's Bronze Star. She'd taken the impossible shot. She'd proven herself. But deep in her gut, she knew the hardest test was still coming. Because the vulture never forgot an insult. And she'd just killed his mortar team while he watched from somewhere in these mountains. The duel wasn't over. It was just beginning. 48 hours after the impossible shot, Kiera sat in a briefing room at Forward Operating Base Schenck, surrounded by senior officers who looked at her with expressions ranging from admiration to concern. On the screen behind Lieutenant Commander Blackwell was a grainy satellite photo of the ridgeline where she'd made her kills, overlaid with ballistic trajectory data that looked more like abstract art than military intelligence. Chief Thorne, a Navy captain she didn't recognize, spoke first. Your shot has been verified by 3 independent sources: ISR drone footage, recovered ballistic evidence, and ground assessment team. 4 confirmed kills at 2,470 meters under combat conditions. That's the longest confirmed kill in naval special warfare history. He paused, letting that sink in. It's also direct disobedience of a lawful order in combat. Lieutenant Commander Blackwell ordered you to hold fire. You engaged anyway. Explain your decision. Kiera stood at attention, her dress uniform crisp despite the Afghan heat outside. Sir, I assessed that air support would not arrive in time to prevent mortar fire on friendly positions. The enemy crew was professional, adjusting rapidly. Mathematical probability suggested they would find range within 90 seconds. I had a firing solution with 72% confidence. I determined that a 72% chance of success was superior to a 100% chance of casualties from indirect fire. The captain's expression didn't change. And if you'd missed, then I would have accepted full responsibility for my actions, sir. That's not how military discipline works, Chief. You don't get to choose which orders to follow based on personal assessment. Blackwell spoke up. Sir, if I may, Chief Thorne's assessment was tactically sound. My order to hold fire was based on doctrine and risk mitigation. Her decision to engage was based on real-time battlefield assessment. She was right. I was wrong. If anyone should face consequences, it's me for failing to recognize the tactical reality. The captain studied them both. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Relax, both of you. You're not being court-martialed. Chief Thorne, you're being recommended for Bronze Star with Valor device. Your shot saved 12 lives and eliminated a significant threat. The insubordination issue will be noted in your file with context that it was tactically justified. He stood, extending his hand. Welcome to a very small club, Chief. There are perhaps 5 snipers in the entire U.S. military who have made confirmed kills over 2,400 meters in combat. You're now one of them. And the only woman. After the captain left, Blackwell remained behind. Chief, we need to talk about something else. Intelligence intercepts from the past 48 hours. He pulled up a new screen. Taliban radio traffic, translated to English. The words made Kira's blood run cold. The vulture has heard of the woman's impossible shot. He says it was luck, not skill. He says he will prove American weakness. He challenges her to face him. Sniper against sniper. He will add her to his 63. Kira read the intercept twice. He's calling me out specifically. Yes, and command wants to ignore it, considers it propaganda, psychological warfare, not worth risking our best precision shooter on what amounts to a personal vendetta. But you don't agree. Blackwell met her eyes. The vulture has killed 4 American snipers who tried to hunt him. 63 total American KIA over 6 years. He's not just a propaganda problem. He's a genuine threat who happens to be using you as bait. He paused. If we ignore this, he'll keep killing. But if we engage, we risk losing you to someone who might be better than both of us combined. Master Chief Brennan and I can take him. Can you? Blackwell's voice was sharp. Or is this about proving something? About the hesitation 18 months ago when you had him in your scope and didn't fire? The question hit like a physical blow because it was true. Part of her did want redemption for that moment of doubt, for the 2 seconds that had let the vulture escape and kill dozens more Americans. Sir, it's about finishing the mission. That's what we do. That's what my grandfather did in Desert Storm. When there's a threat, you eliminate it. You don't walk away because it's dangerous. Blackwell studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Master Chief Brennan is already preparing equipment. You have 72 hours to locate and eliminate Dmitry Volkov. After that, you're extracted regardless of mission success. I'm not losing my best sniper to an extended manhunt. Yes, sir. And Chief, don't hesitate this time. He won't. The mountains of Khorasan province swallowed them like a vast mouth of stone and shadow. Kira and Brennan moved through the terrain with the patient deliberation of apex predators, covering perhaps 8 miles per day, always staying in positions that offered fields of fire exceeding 1,500 meters. They were hunting a ghost who was simultaneously hunting them. Day 1 produced nothing. No contacts, no sightings. Just empty mountains and the constant awareness that somewhere in this maze of ridges and valleys, another sniper was watching, waiting, calculating. Day 2, they found a hide site. Professional construction, camouflage with local vegetation, positioned with excellent sightlines over a valley approach. Spent shell casings inside, 7.62 by 54R with carved vulture symbols. 3 of them. He's killed 3 people from this position, Brennan said quietly, examining the casings. And he left these deliberately. He wants us to know he was here. How old is the site? Brennan checked wind erosion patterns on the disturbed soil, examined the vegetation's wilting pattern. 36 to 48 hours. He was here when you made your 2,470-meter shot. He watched it happen. Kira felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. He's been tracking us since the mortar team. More than tracking, he's studying you, learning your patterns, your capabilities. Brennan's weathered face was grim. Chief, this man has survived 4 SEAL sniper teams. He's not just skilled, he's patient, tactical, and utterly ruthless. We need to think like him. What would he do? If I were him, I'd set a trap. Use something that would draw you into a predetermined kill zone where I'd already calculated every possible shot. Brennan scanned the surrounding terrain. Something that would make you commit to a position before you realized it was a trap. Day 3, they found what the vulture wanted them to find. The decoy was almost perfect. A fighting position on a ridge approximately 1,850 meters from their position, just barely visible with careful observation. Through her spotting scope, Kira could make out what appeared to be a sniper's hide, complete with a rifle scope catching sunlight in brief glints. "Too obvious," she said immediately. Brennan agreed. "He's not that careless. That's bait, which means he's somewhere else, watching to see if we take it." Kira studied the terrain with the methodical assessment her grandfather had taught her. "If I were setting this trap, I'd position myself with a sight line to both the decoy and any likely position someone would shoot from." She traced angles in her mind, calculating fields of fire, dead space, optimal firing positions. There, a cave entrance approximately 30 meters behind and 8 meters above the decoy position. Deep shadow, impossible to see into from this distance, but offering perfect observation of anyone who took the bait. "Master Chief, that cave, that's where I'd be." Brennan studied it through his spotting scope. "Can't see anything inside, too dark. Range is 1,950 meters. I don't need to see him. I need to know where he has to be to watch both positions." Kiera's mind was already running calculations. "Geometry tells us he's in that cave if he's using the decoy as bait. We can't see him, but mathematics says that's where he must be." "Chief, you're talking about a blind shot. Firing at a position you can't confirm is occupied. My grandfather once shot through a smokescreen in Desert Storm. He couldn't see the target, but he knew where the target had to be based on the geometry of the ambush." She looked at Brennan. "I can make this shot." Brennan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 decades in special operations. "Your grandfather did make that shot. I was there. Machine gun nest had us pinned. They used smoke for concealment. Nathaniel calculated where the gunner had to be positioned based on the angle of incoming fire. He fired blind. The gun went silent." He turned to face her fully. "That shot saved my life a second time, and it was the bravest thing I ever saw, because he had no way to confirm the target existed until after he'd committed to the shot. If you're going to do this, I'll back your play. But understand, if you're wrong, you give away our position, and the vulture will have us bracketed." "I'm not wrong." Kira settled into her final firing position. The TAC-50 rested on its bipod, stock pressed firmly into her shoulder, her body molded to the earth in a position she could hold for hours if necessary. Through her scope, the cave entrance was a dark smudge, revealing nothing. The calculations came faster now, muscle memory built over thousands of repetitions. 1950 meters to cave mouth, add 30 for depth, call it 1,980 total. Gusting 14 to 16 crosswind, quartering left, cold air, dense, bullets fly truer. Dial 17, 8 MOA elevation, maybe 0.4 more for cave depth. Hold 9.4 mils wind. Coriolis adds 0.4 east. 3.1 seconds flight time. Simple geometry, deadly faith. She was about to fire 750 grains of copper and lead into a shadow, trusting geometry over visual confirmation, betting her life on mathematics that promised her target existed in a space she couldn't see. "Master Chief, final wind call." Brennan checked his instruments one last time. "Wind 14, gusting 16. Mirage pattern suggests it's steady at 13 at target elevation. Recommend hold 9.4 mils left." He paused. "Chief, you're clear to engage when ready. I trust your math." Her breathing became mechanical, each cycle measured and precise. The crosshairs steadied as her pulse dropped into the 50s, the zone where instinct gave way to pure calculation. The crosshairs settled on a point 2 meters left of the cave entrance's center, 18 inches high, not aiming at what she could see, but at where geometry promised her target must be. The world narrowed to mathematics in faith, physics in courage. Everything her grandfather had taught her distilled into this single moment where human skill challenged the limits of possible. Her finger took up the trigger's slack. First stage, second stage, the final pressure that separated intention from action. The TAC-50 roared its defiance at impossible distance. Kira stayed welded to her scope, watching the empty cave entrance. 3.1 seconds. She counted each one like a prayer, watching the empty darkness for movement that might never come. Movement. A figure stumbled out of the cave's darkness, silhouetted against the lighter stone behind. Through her scope, she watched him fall, tumbling down the 8-meter slope to land in a heap at the base of the ridge. Brennan's voice was barely a whisper. "Target down. I say again, target down. Jesus Christ, Chief. You just made a blind geometry shot at 1,950 meters. That's not supposed to be possible." "It's not blind if you trust the math," Kira said, but her hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding her system as the magnitude of what she'd done crashed over her like a wave. They waited 30 minutes, watching for movement, before advancing to confirm the kill. Combat doctrine said wait for QRF, but they both knew they needed to verify the target before the Vulture's allies could recover the body. The man lying at the base of the ridge was Dmitry Volkov. Kiera knew it from the intelligence photos she'd memorized, but seeing him in person was different. He looked almost ordinary, mid-40s, graying beard, weathered skin from years in mountain warfare. In his pocket, they found 64 shell casings, each carved with a tiny vulture, 63 for his confirmed kills. The 64th blank, prepared for the victim he'd expected to claim. He'd been preparing to add her to his collection. Her .50 BMG round had struck him center mass, just left of the sternum. Through and through wound. Death would have been nearly instantaneous. But there was something else in Volkov's pocket. A photograph, worn at the edges from years of handling. Brennan pulled it out carefully. The image showed two men in military fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. One was clearly a younger Volkov, maybe mid-20s. The other? "Chief." Brennan's voice was strange. "You need to see this." Kira looked at the photo. The second man's face was hauntingly familiar. The same bone structure, the same intense eyes she'd seen in old photographs on her grandfather's ranch. "That's..." She couldn't finish. "That's your grandfather," Brennan confirmed quietly. "Or someone who looks exactly like him." They found the answer on the back of the photo, written in faded ink. N. Thorne and D. Volkov. Sniper Exchange Program, Fort Benning, 1988. The realization hit like a physical blow. Her grandfather and the Vulture had trained together, had been friends perhaps, before the Soviet Union collapsed, before Volkov defected to Chechnya, before everything went wrong. "He knew," Kira whispered. "Volkov knew exactly who I was, whose granddaughter. That's why he challenged me specifically." "This wasn't just about you being a woman sniper," Brennan said. "This was personal. He wanted to prove he'd surpassed his old instructor's legacy by killing that instructor's bloodline." Kira stared at the photograph, at two young men who'd once been allies, now connected only through the geometry of death, across a 1,950-meter kill shot. The duel had been inevitable from the moment Volkov learned her name. She carefully pocketed the photograph alongside the shell casings. Some truths were better shared in person, back home, where her grandfather's memory could absorb one more complicated chapter. Brennan photographed the body, collected evidence, then keyed his radio. "Viper 1, Ironhide. Confirm HVT Volkov eliminated. Grid coordinates follow. Request immediate extraction." Blackwell's response was instantaneous. "Outstanding work. QRF, inbound your position. ETA 30 mics. Stay put and maintain security." While they waited, Kira stood over the Vulture's body, feeling none of the satisfaction she'd expected, just exhaustion and a strange emptiness. This man had killed 63 Americans, had taunted her specifically, had forced her into a duel that could have ended with her name added to his collection. And now he was just another body in an endless war, his skills and experience erased in 1 seconds of flight time. "You okay, Chief?" Brennan's voice was gentle. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe. or pride, but I just feel tired. That's because you're a professional, not a psychopath. Killing isn't supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel necessary. He handed her the 64th shell casing. Keep this, not as a trophy, as a reminder that you stopped 64. That matters. The extraction went smooth. Within 6 hours, they were back at FOB Shank, debriefing intelligence officers who seemed more excited about the blind geometry shot than about eliminating a high-value target. Within 12 hours, the story was spreading through naval special warfare channels. The female sniper who'd made 2 impossible shots in 1 week, who'd beaten the vulture at his own game. Within 24 hours, Blackwell called her to his office with news that would change everything. 2 weeks later, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Spring sunshine filtered through the windows of a ceremony hall packed with naval special warfare personnel, senior officers, and a handful of civilian guests who'd been cleared for attendance. Kira stood at attention in her dress blues, the uniform feeling strange after months in combat fatigues. Beside the podium, a display showed satellite imagery of both her shots, the 2,470-meter mortar team engagement and the 1,950-meter blind geometry shot that had eliminated the vulture. Lieutenant Commander Blackwell stood at the podium, reading from a citation that would be added to official records. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Bronze Star Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device to Chief Petty Officer Kiera Thorne, United States Navy, for service as set forth in the following. For extraordinary heroism in combat operations against enemy forces on 15 March 2022, while serving as precision marksman with Naval Special Warfare. Chief Thorne displayed exceptional courage and tactical acumen when, under extreme combat conditions, she engaged and neutralized a 4-man enemy mortar team at a range of 2,470 meters, the longest confirmed precision kill in Naval Special Warfare history. Her actions directly saved the lives of 12 friendly personnel who were in immediate danger from indirect fire. Subsequently, Chief Thorne displayed continued exceptional skill and bravery by eliminating high-value target Dmitry Volkov at 1,950 meters through calculated blind geometry fire, ending a threat responsible for 63 American casualties. Chief Thorne's actions reflect great credit upon herself and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Blackwell stepped forward and pinned the Bronze Star on her uniform, the weight of it settling just above her heart. The applause was thunderous, echoing off the walls. But the moment Kira would remember wasn't the ceremony itself. It came afterward, when Blackwell approached her privately in a quiet hallway. "Chief, I owe you an apology." She looked at him in surprise. "Sir? I doubted you. From the moment you walked into sniper course, I doubted whether a woman could handle the physical demands, the mental stress, the combat reality of this job. I tried to wash you out. I made your training harder than it needed to be. I was wrong about everything." His expression was serious, almost pained. "Your grandfather's shot in Desert Storm, 2,340 meters, saved 30 Marines, earned him this exact medal. You not only matched his distance, you exceeded it by 130 meters. More importantly, you matched his courage, the willingness to take the shot everyone else calls impossible." Kira felt tears threatening and forced them back. "Sir, you pushed me to be better. Without that pressure, I might not have developed the discipline I needed. No apology necessary." "It's necessary for me to say it." Blackwell extended his hand. "It's been an honor serving with you, Chief. You're the finest precision shooter I've ever seen." They shook hands, the gesture carrying weight beyond mere formality, a recognition of mutual respect earned through fire and blood. Later that evening, Master Chief Brennan found her sitting alone outside the barracks, looking up at the stars. "Mind some company, Chief?" "Not at all, Master Chief. Sit." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Brennan spoke. "I need to tell you something. About that rifle sabotage during your sniper course, the one where someone tampered with your scope before final qualification. Kira turned to look at him. The commander told me they caught the person responsible. They did. It was a candidate named Morrison. He was processed for administrative separation. Brennan paused. What the commander didn't tell you was why Morrison did it. He was scared, Chief. Scared that if you succeeded, it would prove everything he'd been taught about women in combat was wrong. Scared that his own mediocrity would be exposed if someone he'd been taught to see as inferior turned out to be superior. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, but it explains it. And it's important you understand this because you're going to face more Morrisons in your career. People whose identity is so wrapped up in their assumptions about gender and capability that your mere existence threatens them. Brennan's voice was firm. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Don't let them make you hesitate. Your skill speaks for itself. Master Chief, I need to tell you something too. That hesitation 18 months ago, when I had Volkov in my scope and didn't fire, I've been carrying that guilt ever since. All those people he killed afterward, part of me feels responsible. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Your grandfather hesitated once too. Operation Desert Storm, 2 days before the Highway 8 incident. He had a shot on an Iraqi officer, 1,200 meters, perfect conditions. He hesitated for 3 seconds, and the officer moved behind cover. We lost track of him. I never knew that. Nobody does because 3 days later, your grandfather made the impossible shot that saved 30 lives. And that's what history remembers. The hesitation didn't define him. The courage afterward did. Brennan gripped her shoulder. You hesitated once. Then you took 2 of the most difficult shots in naval special warfare history. That's what defines you. Not the moment of doubt, but everything you did after. They sat together watching the stars wheel overhead, sniper and spotter, bound by shared purpose and mutual respect. What happens now? Kira asked. Now? Your contract is up in 4 months. You have choices to make. Re-enlist, continue the fight, or go home, start the next chapter. What do you want? Kira thought of her grandfather's ranch in Montana, of the bronze star now resting alongside his in a velvet box, of the legacy he'd built and passed to her, of the next generation that would need teachers who understood that impossible was just a challenge, not a limitation. I think, she said slowly, I want to go home. I want to teach. 6 months later, Great Falls, Montana, the sign at the entrance read, Thorn Precision Academy, in letters carved from dark wood. Below it, smaller text, Teaching the Art of Impossible Shots since 2023. Kiera stood on the porch of her grandfather's ranch house, now converted into a professional training facility. The main barn had been transformed into a classroom and armory. The vast stretches of ranch land now featured shooting ranges at distances from 100 to 2,000 meters. The second barn housed sleeping quarters for residential students who came from across the country, and increasingly from military units worldwide, to learn from the woman who'd made history in Afghanistan. On the wall inside, 2 bronze stars hung side by side. The first earned by Colonel Nathaniel Flint Thorne in Desert Storm, 1991, for a 2,340-meter shot that saved 30 Marines. The second earned by Chief Petty Officer Kiera Phantom Thorne in Afghanistan, 2022, for a 2,470-meter shot that saved 12 SEALs and a 1,950-meter blind geometry shot that ended a terrorist threat. Below them, a quote carved into wood. Legacy isn't about the shots you make, it's about the ones you teach others to take. The Academy's first full class consisted of 24 students, 10 women, 14 men. Among them were 3 active duty SEAL candidates sent by Blackwell himself with a note that simply read, Teach them what you taught me about impossible. And there was one student who'd arrived yesterday, nervously clutching a letter of recommendation signed by Lieutenant Commander Garrett Blackwell. Her name was Mackenzie Blackwell. She was 19 years old, and she wanted to be a sniper. Kira found her now on the main range, struggling with a 600-meter shot using Nathaniel's old Winchester Model 70. "You're aiming directly at the target," Kira said gently, approaching from behind. Mackenzie jumped slightly, then relaxed. "Sorry, Chief Thorne. I'm not getting the calculations right." First lesson, stop apologizing. Shooting is about confidence backed by mathematics, not sorry backed by hope. Kira knelt beside her. Second lesson, you're not shooting at what you see. You're shooting at where mathematics promises your bullet and target will meet. She adjusted the scope's elevation, talking Mackenzie through the calculations. Bullet drop, wind drift, the beautiful mathematics of ballistics that transforms shooting from luck into science. "My father said you're the best teacher I could learn from," Mackenzie said quietly. He said he used to doubt you, that he tried to make you quit, but you proved him wrong about everything. Your father pushed me to be better than I thought I could be. Sometimes the people who challenge us most are the ones who teach us the most important lessons." Kira stepped back. "Now, take the shot. Aim high to compensate for drop. Aim left for wind. Trust the mathematics." Mackenzie settled behind the rifle. Her breathing slowed. The shot rang out across the Montana mountains. And 600 meters away, the target jumped as the bullet struck center mass. The young woman's whoop of joy echoed exactly like Kira's had 24 years earlier on this same range. "That's lesson 1, Kira said, smiling. "Want to know what lesson 2 is?" "Yes, ma'am." "Lesson 2 is that you just got lucky with the wind. Tomorrow we learn to actually read it." The exact words her grandfather had spoken to her at age 8. The legacy continuing forward in an unbroken chain. Over the following months, the academy grew. Former students graduated and went on to military and law enforcement careers, carrying forward the techniques Kira taught. Master Chief Brennan came out of retirement to teach wind reading and old-school ballistics calculation. His stories of Desert Storm and Afghanistan filling the gaps between mathematics lessons. One student, a 23-year-old woman from Texas, made a 1,680-meter combat save during a deployment to Syria, crediting everything she'd learned at Thorne Precision Academy. She sent Kira a spent shell casing and a letter that simply said, "I made the impossible shot because you taught me it wasn't impossible." That casing joined others in a display case in the Academy's entrance hall, each one representing a life saved, a mission successful, a student who'd learned that limitations were often just lack of imagination combined with failure of courage. 3 years after opening, on a cold Montana morning with snow dusting the peaks, Kira stood on the range watching Mackenzie Blackwell, now graduated from BUD/S sniper course, now a chief petty officer herself, teaching a new group of students the fundamentals of long-range precision fire. Brennan stood beside Kira, his weathered face creased with satisfaction. "Your grandfather would be proud, Chief. You've built something that'll outlast both of us, not measured in shots made, but in shooters trained. He taught me that passing forward what you've learned matters more than personal accomplishment." Kira watched Mackenzie patiently correct a student's breathing technique. "She's going to be better than I was." "Good, that's the point." Brennan handed her an envelope. "This came this morning. You should read it." The letter was from the Department of Defense, official letterhead. Inside, a formal notification that her 2,470-meter shot had been officially recognized as the longest confirmed kill in United States military history by a female service member, and the third longest overall. The letter included an invitation to speak at the Naval Academy about precision marksmanship and the importance of mathematical discipline in combat operations. Kira read it twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in her pocket beside her grandfather's Bronze Star, which she still carried every day. Also in that pocket, the photograph of Nathaniel and Dmitry Volkov, Fort Benning, 1988, A reminder that even enemies once started as students. That legacy could twist in unexpected directions. That the mathematics of ballistics connected lives across decades in ways neither algebra nor geometry could predict. "You going to accept?" Brennan asked. "I think if you have knowledge that can save lives, you have a duty to share it. So yes." That evening, as the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting them in shades of amber and crimson, Kira stood alone in the ranch house, looking at the two bronze stars mounted side by side. Her fingers traced the engraving on her grandfather's medal. "For extraordinary heroism, Iraq, 1991. Then her own. "For extraordinary heroism, Afghanistan, 2022. Two generations, two impossible shots. Two people who'd refused to accept that the word impossible meant anything more than a challenge to be calculated and overcome." Outside, she heard Mackenzie calling students to evening formation for the day's final debrief. Young voices responding with discipline and enthusiasm. The next generation of warriors learning that courage plus mathematics equaled impossible made possible. Kira smiled, touching both bronze stars one final time. Her grandfather had saved 30 Marines with one impossible shot. She'd saved 12 SEALs with two more. But the students she'd trained and would train, they would save hundreds, maybe thousands. She walked outside into the Montana sunset, ready to teach the next lesson, to train the next shooter, to pass forward the knowledge that her grandfather had given her 24 years ago on this same ranch. The impossible shot wasn't just about distance or conditions or calculations. It was about refusing to accept limitations, about trusting mathematics when instinct failed, about taking the shot everyone else called impossible because lives depended on someone being brave enough to try. And now, on this ranch in Montana, surrounded by mountains and students and the echoes of her grandfather's voice in every wind shift and elevation calculation, Kira Thorne was ensuring that the next generation would be braver, better, and more capable than she'd ever been. Not perfection, not glory, just passing the torch, one calculated shot at a time.